Madam Deputy Speaker, I congratulate the Honourable Lady and the passion with which she speaks on behalf of early learning. Now, I feel a bit bereft about this government because normally I like to make constructive criticism on my own side, but I have to say there's very little in this Queen's speech that I disagree with, so perhaps I better sit down straight away. But you'll forgive me if I just say a few words. Of course, that compares with previous governments. I find it very difficult to agree with a single thing that the government of David Cameron was doing. He took the view, which some people in the Labour Party may take the view now, that their party is unelectable, and he had to veer towards a kind of liberal agenda. But he did do one thing right, and that was to call a referendum on Europe, although, of course, he never thought for a moment that the referendum would ever happen, because he'd still be in coalition with the Liberals. And if it did happen, there would just be a few right-wingers, as he would have termed them, arguing for Brexit, and he would have won easily. But Brexit has changed everything, and this is the problem now for the Labour Party in reconnecting with their voters in northern and Midland seats like the one I represent in Gainsborough. So the government is in a strong position, but I do counsel against hubris. And if they are to hold on to their gains, if we are to hold on to their gains in areas such as I represent, then we have to actually not just talk the talk, but walk the walk and take the action. And that applies particularly, I think, on immigration and on housing. Brexit was won not because people like me were wittering on about parliamentary sovereignty for many years. It was won on the issue of immigration and people in the Midlands and the north of England feeling that their government was out of touch on immigration. I welcome the new bill that is now being promoted. The fact is, though, that there are perhaps 1 million people in this country who we don't know about, who are illegally here. This is a real issue and of real concern. And what really angers people is when they see these daily pictures of illegal crossings on the Channel. I believe that the only way to stop this is to make it a criminal offence to try and enter this country illegally. And once that is proven, that would entail a custodial sentence and deportation. If we don't take action, then this trade will continue. It will get worse and worse, and sooner or later there will be a horrible tragedy in the Channel, and people will drown and they will die. So the bill is welcome, but we have to be robust on this. But because we can't protect ourselves simply by creating a wall around this country. Why do people come here? These are not bad people, they are good people, they just want a better future. They are coming here because their own countries are in chaos. And therefore we have to commit ourselves to international aid and overseas development. And I won't labour the point, but I have been critical of the way the budget has been cut. We promised to restore it, but we have to concentrate aid in a practical way on the poverty which is motivating this mass migration. So immigration then is a vital issue. The next one is housing. Now I know that some of my colleagues, quite rightly, who represent prosperous seats in the South East are worried about this bill. And personally I see no point in encouraging developers to build on greenbelt land. They always want to build executive housing on green land. We want to build housing in the cities, in the towns, in the north of England, in the Midlands. And I think we should reconnect with people by committing ourselves to a Macmillan government-type programme of building 300,000 houses a year. Now, his mistake perhaps was to build council houses. I want to build housing for young people which they can afford, they can convert rent into purchase. And this will really connect with young people who in places like the South East simply can't get on the property ladder. That's how this government will be a success, is giving people a stake in their own society and not just being renters. That is a true levelling up agenda. And I'm grateful too for the government to taking on this issue of free speech in the universities. And it's none of my business really, but I think if the Labour Party is to reconnect with so many of their natural supporters in the north, they have to turn their backs on this sort of woke, politically correct agenda of denigrating our past. The past is the past as it is. I mean, apparently, on my mother's side, I understand that my grandfather was born in Barbados. He was the son of a missionary. But it's quite probable that his grandfather, great-grandfather, were involved in the slave trade and may even have owned slaves. Am I to denounce my own family? The fact is that the slave trade was so endemic in the 18th century, there are probably hundreds of thousands of people in this country who descended from slave owners. Slavery is wrong, it is wrong. We led the world in abolishing it, but the history is as it is. And similarly, when I go up to the committee corridor, I see a picture of Queen Elizabeth I, a glorious picture of Gloriana. Well, she ensured that my ancestor, Richard Leigh, was hung, drawn and quartered for no other reason that he was a Catholic priest. But do I condemn Elizabeth I? No, it's part of our history. So we have to be proud of Britain. We have to stop tearing down statues, stop denigrating our past, and accept the past is as the past, with all its benefits and regrettable occurrences. And of course I'll give way, yeah.
For giving way, and agree on some level about the need to protect our nation's history. So on that basis, will he condemn comments made by the Universities Minister on Radio 4 yesterday about the Holocaust and Holocaust deniers and people who wish to debate the facts of the Holocaust being protected speech under the new free speech in universities legislation, which his government is putting forward, if he is so concerned about ensuring that the nation's history is protected?
I didn't actually hear the interview, but all I can say is that anti-Semitism, like all these sort of isms, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, they're all completely wrong, regrettable and horrible. And I hope, actually, it wouldn't have been necessary to bring in this sort of bill, because there'll be all sorts of unintended consequences. And I heard a university vice-chancellor say yesterday that how are we going to police it? I understand all this. Therefore, it's down to the leadership of the universities and the schools to ensure free speech within reason. Free speech should be governed by good manners. It shouldn't be governed by laws, and we should therefore protect free speech, and it's down to head teachers and vice-chancellors to ensure that this ridiculous platforming stops. Just because, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole transgender issue, but just because you're a well-known feminist writer who has made a few comments on transgender issues, you should not be barred from speaking at university. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the union. This is the single most important issue we have to deal with, even more important than the other issues I've talked about, like immigration and housing. We have to fight for the union. But I do counsel the government in saying this is just an economic issue. Of course, we have to take on the SNP on the economic issues. We mustn't make the mistake of the Remainers in the EU referendum in saying it's all about money. We mustn't play Project Fair. We must say that we love being together with Scotland. We love the Scottish people. We love the Union. We've achieved so much together. Let's keep it going.